To you all for joining us today for Farm to Institution New England's forum on food security on campuses. This is part one, creating and sustaining food pantries. This webinar is the first in a new Find series, which is focused on food security on campuses. My name is Tanya Taranovsky, and I'm the Director of Programs at Farm to Institution New England, and I'm really happy to be moderating today's webinar. Also helping on today's webinar is Find's Communication Manager, Sarah Lyman. You may see her helping out in the chat. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. With a brief outline of what you can expect on today's forum. After just a short introduction about Find and the Farm and City Campus Network, I'll be handing things over to our speakers. We'll make sure to leave plenty of time for questions, so feel free to add questions as we go along, or you can enter them as they come to you during our Q&A period. And at the end of the webinar, we'd be really grateful if you'd answer our brief evaluation survey, and then we'll leave you with some helpful resources as well. We are going to be recording today's webinar, and you'll get access to that after the webinar is over, and it will be sent to you via email, and you can find it on Find's YouTube channel. As we get started, I'm just going to remind you about two interactive features that we use during our webinars. If you look at your Zoom toolbar, usually towards the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a button for chat. This is going to open a chat box, which you can use to share comments or other information with folks attending today. And we'd love it if you'd take a moment to just share your name, your organization or business or institution, and if you'd like, how you're working to address food security. We'd love to hear from you as well. You'll also see a Q&A button, and that opens another box that you can use then to address specific questions to our panelists or to them all in general. We'll answer them, like I said, during the Q&A period of the webinar. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Farm to Institution New England, or FINE. Farm to Institution New England is a cross-sector network backbone organization working to mobilize the power of New England institutions to transform our food system. We're working with K through 12 schools, colleges, as we're talking about today, correctional facilities, healthcare facilities, and we also have a new initiative in the early child care education sector, so stay tuned for more information about that. For more information about FINE, you can visit our website, www.farmtoinstitution.org. You can see many resources we have available there. As part of our work with the campus sector, FINE supports the work of the New England Farm and City Campus Network. This is a network of and a community of higher education and food system stakeholders who connect, who share, and collaborate to develop transparent regional supply chains and to educate campus communities about regional food systems. And these webinars, like today's, are just one way that the Farm and City Campus Network shares information and convenes people around key issues in our food system. And we always love to hear from you. If you have ideas for topics, for speakers, for information you'd like to learn more about, please let us know. So those of you who are joining us today probably realize that food insecurity is a rising concern, not just across the nation, but also very specifically on college campuses, and institutions around New England are trying to address this. Today's speakers are going to highlight the way they're centering their efforts around food pantries and how they've developed their programs for sustainability and flexibility over the long term. So we're really excited to have them join us today. First up, we have a team from the University of Vermont. Nicole Reilly works for Sodexo and is the Sustainability and Campus Partnerships Manager at UVM. She'll be leading things off for us. And following Nicole will be Maeve Forbes and Malarie McGalliard. They're undergraduate and graduate students respectively at UVM, and they are also co-directors of Rally Cats Cupboard, the campus food pantry. We also have joining us today, Annie Ciaraldi. And Annie has one of the longest titles, which reflects the many ways that she's serving students' needs on the campus of UMass Lowell. She's the Associate Dean of Student Affairs for Compliance and Violence Prevention, the Title IX Deputy Coordinator, and the single point of contact for food and housing insecure students. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you're here to tell your stories. And with that, I would like to hand things over to Nicole. Nicole? And for those of you who are just joining us while Nicole's pulling her slides up, feel free to introduce yourselves as well in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know your name, your organization, and what kind of work you're doing in food insecurity. Nicole, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so great to be with you all today. Going to jump right in. We have a lot to cover and I want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. So I'm just going to kind of run through some of the early actions that UVM took to start addressing food insecurity. And this is really the Food Insecurity Working Group was instrumental in helping establish the pantry, but also other resources and programs on campus. And I'm the acting co-chair of that Food Insecurity Working Group for the last 3 years. And so, and was kind of there from the beginning in 2016. So we did establish this group as a multi-departmental, and it does include community members such as the Vermont Food Bank and Hunger Free Vermont as well, just to help us with resources and connecting students to the community. We did release a hunger resource guide and then later a website, but really what I think was really helpful in the beginning was we did data collection on campus, 2 surveys with over 10,000 students total. We also did focus groups as well, and this really captured the attention of leadership as we kind of started sharing this information out. It really, there was no doubt that this was an issue on UVM's campus. At that time, there was definitely a lot of national coverage about the issue, but I think for anybody that does this work, you know, sometimes convincing people that this is present in their own community can be difficult, and is something that we had to kind of work around and work with our leadership for them to really understand what hunger looks like here at UVM. So 25, our survey is basically 26% and 17.5% of undergrad students were food insecure. We definitely did see certain identities and student populations experiencing food insecurity at higher rates, including students of color, first generation LGBTQ students. And students, we did on our second survey ask what they'd be most likely to use in terms of resources. And one of the first models was that Swipe Out Hunger model, an emergency food pantry, then followed by a food pantry on campus, and then community resources such as SNAP or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And for those of you that might not be familiar with UVM, we have about 10,000 undergrad students. We're located in Burlington, Vermont. We are a Division I school, and we do have both undergrad, graduate, and medical program here at UVM. Our survey was also interesting in that it did collect data on staff and faculty members as well. So it was not just students that we surveyed, so it was the larger UVM community. We really are here to talk to you about food pantries, but I did want to just kind of acknowledge that there are other areas that we are working on and other resources that are available. So we have outreach and education, collaboration for SNAP benefits, for subsidized CSAs through NOFA, Vermont, and also through our own Catamount Farm. And then we do have a Swipe Out Hunger program as well, which works really nicely to supplement and support the food pantry. As I mentioned, the data did identify that certain identities were experiencing food insecurity at higher rates. And so one of the first steps that the Food Insecurity Working Group could do fairly quickly was that we identified identity centers across campus, and we're able to get them funding through the Division of Student Affairs Office for 5 years. So basically every year they would have a line item in their budget for food pantries and snacks, which previously they did not have that. So the Mosaic Center for Students of Color has long had a food pantry that was really run by staff and faculty that donated items. They did have a kitchen as well, so students could cook together. So that's really kind of our oldest food pantry on campus. And then the others were more like snack shelves, granola bars, tea, very minimal in terms of like the complete meals or like a balanced meal that people could get, but definitely something in the moment if you were hungry, just, stopping in before class. And with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Maeve, and she's going to walk through Rally Cats Cupboard, which is our on-campus food pantry.
Yeah, so even with those identity centers that were holding those spaces for food insecure students, we realized that there was still a big need for a bigger point source place where students could get their food. And so Rally Cats Cupboard became a student-led initiative in 2018 after those surveys were released. The surveys found that 1 in 5 UVM students were food insecure, and that was the big thing. And that was the big thing that really pushed for this. And so the SGA president at the time began the steps to start opening the on-campus food pantry and started talking with administration, and having support from this senior leadership and administration was the key thing, and the food insecurity working group was the key thing to make sure that this pantry actually could happen, because while it was a student-led initiative, unfortunately students can't do anything without the help of administration. So that was really important. And so then in spring of 2019, after working through the logistics of how the pantry would work, we got granted a location, and the next SGA president, who was Jillian Scannell at the time, opened up Rally Cats Cupboard in February of 2020. And the funding came initially from the student government, because that was where the cupboard sat under, and then also a Sodexo grant, which as far as I know, Nicole helped us get. And now we are running off of grants and donations that we have collected throughout the past about 2 years from different sources around Burlington. And a big thing that I just wanted to point out was our administration helped us a lot this past year by making an initiative where the Board of Trustees donated $3 for every vaccine card that got in before a certain date this summer. And it ended up raising, I think, around $30,000 for us, which was absolutely insane. So that was one of those big grants that help us keep going. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so in the first year of the cupboard, we were hosting about 75 to 85 students on average each week. It started out very slow at about maybe 10 students each week. And then as we started, because we were only open 2 days a week, every other week, and then as we started opening more and gaining volunteers, we were able to expand our hours, be open in the summer as well, which was a really big deal, and instead be open 2 days every week instead of bi-weekly. And so now we're sitting at around 15 to 20 volunteers that are like our main core volunteers. The big things that they do are they pick up food. At the time when I was doing it, for a year, I was just a volunteer, and then I picked it up this past summer. We were picking up food, organizing the food shelf. We were hosting the food pantry opening. So every time the food pantry is open, it is student run. There are no any sort of staff or adults involved with it. I guess adults involved with it. It's really just the students there. We coordinate the entire volunteer list. And we also set up all of the food donations. So during COVID-19, our biggest one that we picked up was the Everyone Eats, which was a funded program by the state, where basically it was a community-led initiative for people around the community of Vermont to be able to receive food from local restaurants, and those local restaurants get a stipend. So it kind of creates a cyclical cycle within the community that keeps the money and the economy going, especially during COVID-19. And then we also pick up from local grocery stores. The Williston Food Pantry has donated a lot to us. They donate about once a week. We also receive donations from Catamount Farms, which is our horticulture farm right down in South Burlington, a couple miles away. They are big donators for us during the fall, during picking season. The Intervale Food Hub is big for us. And then our biggest one currently is the Vermont Food Bank. So could we go to the next slide? Thank you. So the Vermont Food Bank became our network partner in spring of 2020. And they were the most important thing for our growth, because as we started to gain more students and started to reach that average of 75 to 80 students, we started to not have enough food to provide for people. We were running out of food. So Natasha Lovell, who previously ran the Pantry, set up this Vermont Food Bank network partner. And through that, we've also been able to be in contact with Hannaford's, which was a really big deal as well, to get fresh groceries to students during the winter months when there wasn't just a plethora of fresh, beautiful vegetables everywhere in Vermont. So our big thing is that we're able to access discounted bulk purchasing. So tomorrow we're getting 1,000 pounds about of food delivered in the morning, and we'll be able to have that out by our pop-up on tomorrow at 1. And so we just get it once a month. We get a bulk order, and then we get to ration out that food for when we're doing it. We also receive local food purchasing grants from them. So we have, one of them is like, we have a grant for $3,000 that we have to buy, like from a community farm, buy just different vegetables from them that will, again, keep the economy in cycle right in the community, which is really awesome. They also have helped us with the retail partnership with Hannaford, as I had said, and then also local gleaning programs, because the Vermont Food Bank also runs a local gleaning program about a mile from our campus, which is really great. So we get fresh veggies from them every week through that. And for anyone who doesn't know what gleaning is basically taking excess food from farms that would have been tilled into the earth because of just excess food that they can't sell on market, or because of damaged goods, like things that have little nicks in them, anything like that. Instead, we get to take them in, and it helps to alleviate like the food insecurity issue, while also promoting sustainability through just keeping the food in the loop, I guess is how I would say it. They've also helped us by providing us marketing materials. So we, 3 Squares Vermont is really important for undergraduate students to be able to receive SNAP benefits. And as well as graduate students, it's much easier for undergraduate students to get it though. And so by being able to market those materials, we have been able to allow more and more undergraduate and graduate students to become aware of 3 Squares Vermont and apply to it as well. We can go to the next slide. So in the beginning, building a successful pantry was hard because you don't realize how much infrastructure you need for it. So luckily, dining services lent us equipment of a freezer, like an ice cream freezer almost during COVID, because they didn't need it luckily, and also a fridge. And we were able to continue to build our store that we had in there. It was almost like it's a grocery store type setup in there, so that people can choose what they want without having any, they have all anonymous abilities to it, and they can choose anything they want. It's just about having the availability of it and the accessibility of it. So then through a grant that was donated during COVID, like mid-summer last year or early summer, we were able to get a refrigerator and freezer, which you see in the picture here, for ourselves and return the others to dining. And so we were able to keep more perishable foods because they were much larger, and it had a better setup of the glass door that helped students be able to make choices easier. And we were seeing more food leaving those produce areas because people could see them a lot easier instead of having to tuck them in the back just to fill the fridge up. And then we also used marketing a lot. We got the word out through Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is our main way of reaching people. If you want to find us, it's just Reilly Cat's Cupboard on Instagram, on Instagram. And that's our main way that we communicate with all of our constituents that are needing food. We DM with them, everything like that. So students can reach out to us during unopened times to basically say, I wasn't able to make it, but I am not able to afford food. Could you help me? And we usually would set up like a grocery bag for them or a box, and we'll just deliver it to them on that day or have them come pick it up the day that they need it. So while we're only open for 2 days a week, we're available to students pretty much every single day. And that was what was really important for us with the Instagram. So we can go to the next slide. So then COVID hit, and it was actually pretty much right when we got up and running with our pantry, which was kind of unfortunate. So I have only been part of the pantry during COVID times. And the biggest thing that happened was our increase in safety and sanitation, but also when students got sent home, we had food. So in partnership with the Food Insecurity Working Group, we were able to host 3 off-campus grocery bag drops that they ran, and we just donated to, as well as with the individuals receiving bags of groceries and grocery gift cards throughout the time as they reached out to the school. We also did a Thanksgiving delivery included that had a packaged holiday meal and pantry staples in it. So we were able to provide pantry staples for them because at the time we had to close for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then actually we ended up being able to open pretty quickly after in the summer, starting late spring, early summer, we were able to open back up, and we did completely we had 3 people allowed in the pantry at a time. It was a very large pantry, but we only had 3 people allowed. We brought it down to 1 person sitting at the desk, 1 student volunteer sitting at the desk tracking people, and students were able to come in, mask, sanitize, go through, and then leave out the opposite way, so they weren't interacting with the students then coming in again. And we had consistent sanitation going on. It became a lot because as we were getting food in, we were also sanitizing the food and then putting it out. And then once students went through, we would sanitize again. So we put in a lot of precautions that made it a little more tedious, but was definitely worth it because it meant we were able to stay open for students. And that was we saw a dip once students went home, and then once summer came again, about late summer, so we started to see that rise again as students started to come back to campus. So that was definitely really good that we were able to stay open for them. Oh, and that's all from me. So if you all have any questions, just let me know, but I'm going to pass it over to Mallory now for the future of the cupboard.
Thanks, Maeve. All right, so fast forward to August 2021, we had an unfortunate incident happen at the pantry where a flood happened, and it actually collapsed the ceiling end of the pantry, and it was unsafe for us to operate out of there. We lost all of our food, and we pretty much had to restart from scratch. We're still in the process of getting a new facility up and running for our pantry, but during this time, we had an outpouring of support from the UVM community, as well as the administration and different food donors around town that was able to help us start a new student-led initiative, which is PopUp Markets that we're hosting on campus right now, because we're trying to do everything that we could think of to keep that continuation of that flow of food going for students who are heavily reliant on this service. So we have PopUp Markets now in front of the library once per week. And that's where we are right now. I wanted to share a chart with you all because we've had about a month and a half worth of markets so far. And I wanted to share some factors that have helped us determine market attendance and also success of these markets. So our very first market was at the very end of August during the summer still, and we had 23 people come. That was a very limited advertising and promotion. Word of mouth got around, and by our second market and third, as you can see, the attendance rose to over 150 students. Some of the determinants of the attendance were weather. Weather played a huge proponent in how many people came out because we were in the outdoors in the elements. So we had just a small overhang, so students we noticed would come more frequently in the more pleasurable days. Location was key. We were right in the middle of campus, whereas before the facility that you saw prior was kind of tucked away in a corner of campus. We're right in the middle where people could have that visibility, and we were there consistently and have been there consistently every week. Having a great variety of perishable and shelf-stable goods has been really great for folks to be able to pick and choose what they want for themselves and their households. Having proper signage present, saying free food, no strings attached, those kinds of things have been really helpful, as well as social media, of course. Next slide, please. Kind of snowballing off that, some key takeaways that we've learned from this pop-up market distribution style is that students are more inclined to visit the market when we have a focus on locally sourced food items, where they ask us where their food is coming from, and we're able to tell them with certainty that that was picked yesterday from the Intervale, or this was gleaned from this source just a few days ago. Kind of building that commitment to reducing food miles has been really successful in having students come in and access the food that we have to offer. We also have noticed when crowds gather, it creates this bandwagon effect where it breaks down the stigma of students coming to get access to food. When they see everybody's doing it, they're more inclined to come and help themselves, and it doesn't single out people that are entirely food insecure, but those who may not have wanted to come forward now can, because of that bandwagon effect. We found some great success in pairing like food items together. So when we purchase our food items or we get donations, we try to put, for instance, tomatoes with pasta and basil to encourage people, like, take all three of those and you can kind of make a spaghetti dinner if you'd like. Things like that have been really successful, as well as providing bags and boxes for them to be able to transport things. Some of them have been using their backpacks, but having a bag or a box has really been beneficial to encourage them to take more products that they may need. Next slide, please. So as we plan for the future, we're kind of having to start over since the incident. So once we get into our new space, we hope to reopen later in the semester. We did regain club status at UVM, meaning that we're a part of an infrastructure of over 200 clubs that are in the UVM network, so that we can support and collaborate with them and other student-led initiatives to create awareness and promotion about food access and how we can support each other to make sure that the food security net at UVM is strengthened. We look toward extending hours of operation to accommodate the varying schedules of our students. We are currently only open one day a week with the pop-up distribution setup, but once we get a space, we hope to be able to open up for longer periods of time so that people can access us. We also hope to foster and grow partnerships with more local food providers, and also build more extensive volunteer recruitment plan, where we like to hone in on our volunteers' skill sets and hopefully be able to provide them with things that they might want to expand on while they're in undergrad or graduate school. And also extending food resources to include faculty and staff, which is not currently happening, but we would like to also open the markets up to them as well, because we know that if you're in academia, there's a chance that you might have a need for food. So we want to make sure that it's equitable to everybody who may be in need of that, as well as international students. So that's where we are right now with the UVM Rally Caps cupboard. And at this time, I would like to wrap it up and pass it along to Annie.
Thank you, Mallory. Let me get my screen going here. Oops. There we go. Okay, so welcome everybody.
Before we
Sure.
get started, this is Tanya, just letting you know that again, remember how last time you had to fix the view to.
Oh, I did it again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I don't know how I took that back again. Okay. Much better.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So welcome. No
Present.
problem. Yep, I'm gonna do it now. Did it do it again? Is it fine now? Yeah. So everybody, hi everybody, welcome. And I'm gonna kind of go through my slides without reading from them, not that the other ones did either, but because I want to explain to you how our food pantry came about and grew to where it is today since 2013, which is when we really opened the current food pantry. Our food pantry has actually been in existence for a little while longer than that as a student grown organization. We had students who were operating it for themselves out of their cars and out of our closet and file cabinets, and then asked for help. So what we're doing now actually has been in its current format. This should actually say 6 years. And it's been a long time coming, but it's actually been a great experience for both us and our students that work with us. So first I'll tell you about our clients. Our clients at the food pantry are this. We have, most of them are mainly traditional age students, but we have a lot of international students that are there. We do have some faculty and staff that come into the food pantry. They are, anybody with a UMass Lowell ID can come in, swipe in and shop. And so we see a variety of people. Some of our faculty that come are adjunct faculty. And a lot of times they want to actually come before our hours start. So we do that to accommodate them much earlier. Our pantry is actually open at this point, Monday through Friday, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then on Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We just, to accommodate everybody in their schedules, we have this expanded hours at this point. We have a lot of parenting students on campus, although 2% doesn't seem like much, but we have 16,000 students, so there's quite a few parenting students on campus. And much like UVM, our clientele is made up mainly of students of color, international students, and LGBTQ students, although we see the mainstream also. So right now we're seeing a difference, and I'll tell you about how we pivoted for the pandemic, but we typically serve the 47 to 165 a month, but they are actually coming in weekly. So we see them multiple times during this time. And you can see there how much food we're giving out and the types of food that they are seeking. At this point, we also have toiletries, laundry detergents, school supplies. We have a lot of different things going on at the food pantry. But it's been an adventure getting there. So I'll tell you how that came about. When we started, we had a startup budget of $3,000. And actually, it's an interesting thing that I was told when we started our food pantry, that our food pantry could not become a burden to the budget, the operating budget, and that we needed to figure out ways to deal with this. So we've taken our $3,000 that we got about 5 or 6 years ago now, and have fundraised, and we have different donors, which I'll get into later, but have increased our project fund to about $154,000. It's kept at that level, even though we're spending it. So it's just a great testament to the people who are donating to us, our corporate sponsors, and some other people who are working with us. We staff our food pantry with all student work studies. So we're giving back to the students in that they get to work there and make money, and then they can either use the money for their tuition or for their own needs. We do find that a lot of them come from families that have used food pantries in the past. So it's been a great experience for all of us to get to know each other, to learn their histories, and then see how much they want to give back. A lot of them start out saying, I'll volunteer, but we'd rather pay them. So we do. I have a crowd of people who work as case managers under me, about 5 or 6 of us. And so this is how we approach our students. You can see one of the things that always is discussed is their housing or food security, as well as other resources. So some of our referrals to the food pantry come through this way when students are referred to us for other issues. But whoever we're talking to, we talk about them as a whole person, what's going on in life, et cetera. So this is how we started. We actually decided right from the beginning that we needed to know from top down that we were getting support. And so we went to our executive cabinet to begin with, and had brought data with us on who our students were, what they were experiencing, how many of them, and what their needs were, and then how we potentially could help them. But then we also associated it to student success. So retention to graduation, and to, of course, what they all hope for is those wonderful alumni. And so kind of putting it together in a package for them and educating them on food insecurity amongst UMass Lowell students, which at that point, and it's actually grown now, but at that point was at about 37%. So we were looking at about 5,800 students that were food insecure, living either in our area or in Massachusetts as a community, and trying to figure out how we could help them in general, and then one-on-one very specifically. We had to ask for space, which is like most campuses at a premium for equipment, for human resources, money, et cetera. So we just went in there with a plan. We went in with a white paper actually, and talked about how the food pantry would help us, how it wouldn't be a solution, but it would be just the first step. And giving them the data, I'll tell you, is probably the best thing we could have done, because it made them really realize it was a huge need. And we got the buy-in from our chancellor down. Excuse me. We then went on to, excuse me, to talk with our university partners, who we knew we would need them involved with us to find the space, to secure the space, and then to actually equip it. So once we found a space, which was actually an area that wasn't being used in a brand new building, we brought in dining services, physical plant into the room and asked them, what do? We don't want anything from you except for your advice. And so physical plant actually took over that conversation and redesigned the space so that it was much more usable as a food pantry. And then they put us on a pest control, which may sound funny, but it's off of a loading dock. So they put us on the pest control rotation so we wouldn't have any problems with visitors of the rodent type. And then dining services worked with us to talk about food storage, what we needed to know for the health, Board of Health, what requirements we would have if we had perishable foods. And then they supplied us with a lot of different equipment, much like UVM. They were renovating another area. So they donated to us several shelves, shelving units for both upstairs, and we had a storage unit in our basement. So they equipped that. They actually are holding for us, because we're hoping to go perishable. They're holding for us a commercial freezer and a commercial refrigerator. We will just have to find a bigger space if we want to use that, because our space isn't big enough. We also met with human resources, and I'll explain what a champion is, but we asked them who would be good champions on our campus to help with a project that we decided that we would be running to make it sustainable. And then financial aid for securing work study students. Like I said, we totally staffed by work study students. We then went to potential community partners, and we talked with the Malarie McGalliard Food Bank, which is our local food bank, and they let us know that we had to become a 501(c) charity in order to use their services, which led us to the UMass Foundation and a discussion about using their 501(c)(3) designation for this purpose. And so we were able to do that and secure that. And so we've been a part of the Malarie McGalliard Food Bank now for several years, getting food from them, but also donating back to them when we had excess. We work with Mill City Grows, which is our local community farming organization, and they actually grow a lot of their food on our campus. The picture that's kind of in the background subtly is our greenhouse on campus, part of our greenhouse on campus, where they grow food, but then they also have rooftop gardens all over campus. And so a lot of the stuff that they grow comes from our campus, and then our students are able to sign up with them, get food from them, and my project fund pays for it. So it's a great way for us to provide fresh fruits and vegetables year round locally without having to keep it in the food pantry. And then we talk with local service providers. We have some wonderful youth service providers in the area that help us identify students, identify other services, because they have a lot of our students that go to them. So they will help us connect with them, but then we also help them connect with some of our students that don't know they exist. And then the other people here that we work with in the area. DCF has been a wonderful partner, as well as CTI, which is our youth service provider, and the other ones you see here, all working with us to either provide food or provide nutritional advice, SNAP education, etc. One of our big programs too is housing insecurity, which we're not talking about, but they're wonderful at helping us with that also. Every year we assess our student need to see where we're at. And so these are the different areas that we work with. We work with the Hope Center at Temple to do a survey. We've been doing that now. I think we're in our 4th year now. We've worked with other research universities as well as our own faculty and staff to do research. Just so that we consistently have the information we need to kind of fuel our efforts. It's, for me, it's key to knowing what we're doing and why we're doing it, and so we can inform others. I talked a little bit about our budget, but just so you know, the fundraising part of it has been wonderful. We do a silent auction every November, except for last year and this year. We'll do it in the spring this year. And everything that comes to the silent auction is donated. We have some big prizes, and as well as all the way down to little prizes. It raises about $5,000 every time we run it. And then there's some raffles that go along with it, which are things like lunch with the chancellor or dinner with the vice chancellor and things of that nature, a free parking space for a semester. But then there's a lot of nice gifty kinds of things. We have a couple of corporate sponsors. One of them is a bank, a local bank that donates typically $2,500 a quarter to our project fund. During the pandemic, they upped it to $5,000 a quarter. So they've been a wonderful source of money. But then we also have a matching donor who this past fundraising time gave us a $50,000 matching. So when we hit the $50,000, they gave us an additional $50,000. So that was a wonderful boon to what we have on campus for a project fund. And the nice thing about the project fund is that nobody can touch it. It's ours to spend on our students, which is wonderful. It turns over, it's, you know, untouchable. I talked about becoming a 501c3. It's really important because of the food bank connection, but it's also, if you can seek out grants, a lot of them are for charities. And so you'll want to have that designation. So if you can get that designation through a local foundation, that's wonderful. I talked about our staffing. We use work study students. We have staff and student volunteers. We have a lot of retirees from the university that come back and want to help work. They like to work a lot of our events also, as well as some tabling things so that we can get the word out even more so. We have aligned ourselves with career services and athletics, as well as student government and other orgs. Career services run some really big events for interviewing. And so they ask all of their employers to bring food for the food pantry or school supplies. So it's a huge donation when it happens. And then we too are Division I school. So our athletics department runs challenges, food donation nights, etc. Student government, other organizations are wonderful about donating and working with us, as well as advising us on what students will want in the food pantry. Our international student organization has been incredible about finding different things that we can put on a wish list with Amazon that will meet their needs, as well as where else we can purchase things for them or ask for donations. And then the neighborhood food project. So this is how we make it sustainable to collect food. Basically, our campus is a sprawling campus. And so we have our campus divided into 20 different areas, neighborhoods, if you will. We have a person in every one of those areas or departments that will tell everybody in their area about the food drive of the month and what they're assigned. Because we give every champion an assignment. So it might be grains, it might be proteins, you name it. And we give them a list. And so they publicize that, they collect it. And then the last Wednesday of every month, we go and pick it up. We have a team that does it. The first few years, it was the crew team. In the last couple of years, it's been, excuse me, the basketball team. We provide them with food bins. And then the guys just go around and pick it all up on Wednesday. Takes them hours, but it's really well worth it. That keeps us from having all these like erroneous or little tiny food drives going on campus, although we still do have those and we're so appreciative of them. But this way the campus is just kind of headed towards one particular thing with, I guess, a sense of purpose and goal, because they know what they're getting. And then we know what we're getting also. The marketing part of it is so key to get the word out of what we need, who we need. We have used the movie Hungry to Learn to do some education on campus, but typically it's just meeting with different organizations, different classes, et cetera, and talking about the students that we work with. I happen to find that personalized student stories are very useful to tell people about. And then we have had or been highlighted in different publications on campus, which has been wonderful. And then again, student volunteers, all the things that we always do, you know, the posters, the table tents, bathroom news, things that hang in the stalls, email. We have our information in the syllabus insert, which is about student affairs services, and we're on that to tell students and faculty what's going on, and what, you know, how they can actually access the information we have. My role on campus is a single point of contact, so that the entire campus knows. I've been at UMass Lowell for 31 years, so I kind of know everybody, and they know me. And so I am their person if they have a student that they think might be hungry or homeless, to refer them to me, or if they need a resource of any sort. Since the pandemic hit, we've been kind of a source for Chromebooks for students whose technology dies, or that they just didn't have any. And so that's been a big referral also. We treat them, as I said before, as a whole person. We case manage them, and then we meet with them, you know, a few times. It's not just a one-off, but just to see how they're doing, check in with them, et cetera, and refer them obviously to the different food programs we have. So we also have now scaled up to have a meal spike program, much like UVM talked about. Our students donate the meals, and we have a process for handing them out to students. We are planning a food recipe program in Massachusetts. It's a really funky thing right now, but we're working through that. We have meal plan grants, we call them, not allowed to call them scholarships, that we give to students who are in great need. And then we have mobile food trucks and markets that we partner with to bring onto campus so that there's not this lack of the perishable kinds of things. These are the other things that we've been offering in the food pantry. And a lot of times, some of the things like Chromebooks or backpacks or clothes, we do on a one-on-one basis. We find out for the student what they want and get it to them. Socks, if you haven't heard of Bombas, and it's in my resources that we'll send out to you. Bombas will contribute to your food pantry 500 pairs of socks if you ask. And it's a wonderful partnership. We get ours every other year at this point, but they're extremely popular. And then the last thing I'll talk about is our pivoting for the pandemic. Our campus shut down on March 13th, and it shut down. No buildings were open. Nobody had any access to the buildings. It was entirely remote. And so suddenly we had no access to the food pantry. We had no swipe program, nothing. And you know, I started waving my hands and screaming, saying, just because we have a pandemic and we're remote doesn't mean the students aren't living here still. Meaning the students in the area more so than even the residence halls. And so after 2 weeks, we had planned and prepared a proposal, as you see, to move to an online ordering system. So we went to an online ordering and no contact pickup system that we've been involved in now since. And we're still serving about, I'm going to guess, I shouldn't say guess, but my estimate right now is we're serving about 150 students a week. During the pandemic proper, it was about 80 because there weren't as many students in the area, but they were still coming and still using it a lot. And then you'll see, and I've asked them to distribute the slides, but we have lots of resources on here. And so please feel free to look at them. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'll talk to anybody about this at all. My future is to keep this going, to scale up as much as we can, and to eradicate, obviously, food insecurity. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Annie and Nicole, Mallory and Maeve. Really appreciate it. What we would like to do now is ask some of the questions that have come in. So I'm gonna shoot a few of those over to you. We do have a number of questions that have come in. So one question is from Francesca. What is the balance of prepared food versus canned versus fresh produce? Are those ratios where you'd like to see them, or are students asking for something different? And I'd like to personally add a little twist to that, which is also, UVM, you talked about the ability to bring in locally or regionally sourced food. Also curious what that ratio might be between local or other sources. So UVM, why don't you start with that? And Annie, I'll pass that question over to you as well once the folks at UVM have answered. Yeah, go ahead.
To answer your local versus non-local question for the food pantry, we are pretty much 100% local food. The only local food as in the produce, the fresh produce, the only produce that comes to us, like perishable items that come to us that would not be local, is what we get donated from Hannaford's. So there's not really a ratio there to it. We do not track our numbers of when and like how much of each we get, because we usually just pick it up and then give it out. But I would say we do our canned food is, our non-perishables are always there. They are very consistent. We get about, like I said earlier, about 1,000 pounds, and then we a food per month, and then we delve it out. Then that is all non-perishable canned food. Prepared food, our only prepared food we were getting was the Everyone Eats program, so we'd get about 50 of those a week, and send about 50 of them out. And then our fresh produce we also pick up weekly, so it can vary. Sometimes we would get around 50 pounds, but sometimes if there's no local food available, we'd only get 10 pounds or 5 pounds. So it's really dependent week to week for the fresh produce.
And in our food pantry itself is primarily non-perishable food. So some canned, well, a lot of canned, boxed goods. We do have some, I guess you call it processed foods. We have a couple of different bakeries on campus through Aramark that provide us with, it's kind of funny, it's their leftovers on Friday because they don't want to keep them. So we have all these bagels and breads and things of that nature. So we alert the students that they are. And then our fresh fruits and vegetables come from Mill City Grows, and it's individual per student. So they can go on Mill City Grows website, order it and pick it up. So they get what they want, they get how much they want, and they get how often they want. And I would say the last time I looked, we had about 40 students using Mill City Grows, which is not a whole lot. So we're doing a big push right now with that. And then we give out gift cards to grocery stores, so they find their own that way too. But right now we're primarily non-perishables, which, although I will tell you, there's a lot of not shelf-stable stuff. So we have shelf-stable milk, tofu, cheese. It's amazing to me the things that are shelf-stable nowadays. But
thank you all. We have another question from Andrew, who asks, can you tell us more about how you measured food insecurity on campus? Are you relying on the USDA FSS survey, or do you design your own metrics? Let's start with Annie. We go back over to you real quick.
Yep. So we use, we do a survey we've done a survey every year for 3 years with, we're on the 4th, with the Hope, the Hope Center. And so they do the survey for us on our campus. I actually do it. They give me the stuff to do. But then we also have had 2 different researchers on campus do their own food insecurity research. So it's kind of a combination of both. But we rely on our own data, our own student data. It measures up to what they're reporting nationally, but we do assess our own students every year.
Thanks, Annie. Nicole, are you the right person to ask that question?
Sure. Yep. So our surveys, again, we haven't run these since 2017, the formal survey, but we did use the USDA food insecurity survey module, the 10 question, and then we added our own questions as well. So I think the full survey itself was over 30 questions, but it was based around the USDA food insecurity module.
And I can add a little bit to that as kind of the boots on the ground at the markets. We have our students self-declare their need, so we don't ask them for any additional demographics or any information like that. We try really hard to be gateways to food access instead of gatekeepers, so we don't ask any additional information when we're actually hosting the markets. Thanks,
Mallory. That leads to a great follow-up question, but before I hit that one, I just want to add a little a note that this is, as I said, this is an issue that FINE's really concerned about and interested in, and learning more about and sharing more about. So we'll be thinking more about some of those metrics and helping collect some of that data as we move along with our metrics work as well. So stay tuned for more. So the next question It's also from Francesca. This was specifically for UMass, but UVM, you talked about this a little bit too, and you might have some more things you want to add. How do you work with the stigma, the problem with stigma among students, especially when you have fundraising events that students participate in? Annie?
Sure. So there's a lot of, like I said before, we do a lot of education on food insecurity. Our food pantry, though, too, is very local or central. And so there are students who go in and out all the time. Students work there. And we really haven't run into students saying, I don't want to go there, I don't want to be seen there, et cetera. When we had it, when the students originally had it in a mail room, that was a huge issue. Because they had their friends picking up mail and packages and they were picking up groceries, which was really weird, which prompted the move. But as far as the events are concerned, we have a myriad of people who work those events, so nobody would know who is or isn't food insecure. It is really just a community effort, faculty, staff, and students to raise awareness and to raise the money and the donations. So nobody knows who's who. I mean, to be honest with you, they could be a volunteer, they could be somebody who's food insecure. Nobody has any clue. It's not, no one's revealed, I guess is the way of putting it. So it's been a great community effort.
I love that approach because it engages the people who are most affected by the issue and brings them in on the problem solving part of it, but also helps avoid labels and stigma and things like that. So appreciate
Exactly.
that. We have a couple of other questions. I'm not sure we'll get to all of them, but we'll try to follow up for anything that we didn't get to. One question came in from Melissa in the chat, which was, how do you determine what types of veggies to stock? So this and this also gets at a little bit of another question, which is, how students are responding to what you offer and how they offer input. So Maeve, is that something that you could speak to on behalf of UVM?
I was hoping you weren't going to say that because unfortunately you cut out right at the beginning of it. Could you just repeat that really quick? I'm so sorry.
Of course. The question is, what types of veggies, how do you know what types of veggies to stock? And do you have some input from students who use the food pantry on that?
Okay, thank you for that. So we do not get to pick what veggies we stock. To answer it simply, we take what is gleaned that week and we distribute it. We definitely have a knowledge of what goes better than others, such as like apples are great because everybody loves a sweet treat and you can just eat it on the way to class. Carrots also go out really well, but then we get things like Swiss chard because not many people like Swiss chard, but farmers still grow it. So we get that gleaned a lot and we'll still get it. So unfortunately we don't get to choose the vegetables, but pretty much all of our vegetables are always taken no matter what they are.
Annie, are you able to address sort of student interest or specifics like that through?
Yeah. Well, and like I had said, ours just goes through this Mill City Grows, and so they have choice over whatever they're offering, whatever they're growing. The students can go and pick out whatever they want. So we're not putting things together for them. But much like UVM, we don't have a whole lot of say in what they're growing or offering. But the students have loved being able to access fresh fruits and vegetables often. So it's been a huge success that way, especially students who like to cook and all that. Not having canned vegetables is a really big benefit.
Well, thank you all for helping answer some of those questions. We're wrapping up our hour here, and I just want to thank all of you for joining us. I hope you'll return for our next webinar in this series. We're going to be hearing from Bunker Hill Community College and one of their community partners, FoodLink, and really taking a holistic look at what it takes to build a food pantry and address food insecurity efforts on community college campuses, and also to get sort of that perspective on things. And then we have a couple of other webinars coming up too. You can learn more about them on our website. So we hope that you'll keep an eye out and find them in our newsletter as well. So stay tuned. There are lots of ways to join us. We hope that if you're a dining operator or someone involved in procurement on campuses, you can join our dining operators listserv. That goes for other institutional sectors as well. So it's a great peer-to-peer learning and sharing resource. You can join our Farm and Sea to Campus Network Facebook group where we share events, news, and other information. And we love to hear from you. And so please send us any ideas that you have for topics or speakers that you'd like to see or hear on our webinar series or elsewhere in our programming. You can always email me with any thoughts or suggestions. So appreciate hearing from you. And then finally, we would really love your feedback on this webinar. And so if you could just take a few moments when you close out to answer the survey that will pop up in your browser. Just a few questions will only take a minute, and that feedback really helps us with planning for future efforts. Again, thank you all. I think this is a topic that there's so much more that we can do with this and so much more to explore. We really appreciate hearing from UVM and from UMass Lowell with their experiences and just what holistic programs that you're all developing. So thank you very much for joining us today.